Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello, and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are y'all doing?
Great.
All right.
It is another Sunday evening, so
Yeah.
anything happen over the weekend?
I don't know. I heard something about some person, some old lady in England or something, but can't really hear the sound of that crying over my freedom.
Yeah.
Because it's that day today.
Yeah, I was thinking more.
That was actually more of a Braveheart freedom. That's not the freedom I meant. Never mind. I'm not going to give a... Anyway.
Well, I think we're going to move on to Minotaur, our sort of initial discussion. And was it the Giant Killers? That's the most recent sort of merch.
Yeah.
So where do we start?
Well, we touched on them a little bit since they are the obtainers of the skull beards. Literally the skulls themselves. They seem to like those. But yeah, they were a bit of a surprise. I think you were saying right before we started that you didn't see much about them in the wiki. And I had not heard that there were Minotaurs on Vera before a couple of weeks ago. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, the wiki is dated August 26, 2022. So
yeah, I mean, there's the wiki isn't exhaustive in its information.
I think this is the first time they've ever been revealed.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me wonder if they were holding off because, well, who's going to be the natural predator of the Tolnar? None other than the Minotaur. Alternatively, the Minotaur are a horrible creature that exists on Sanctus and followed them back through to Vera or something. I don't think that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that would make sense why there's a culture of them already having skull beards. Like, we're coming through the portal and they've got skull beards on shields already. Like, that's too fast. It would make more sense if they've been hunting Dunir somewhere, somehow, and then emerged through.
That makes sense. Yeah, because there should not be any dwarves left on Vera. So yeah.
I mean, we played Apocalypse. The freaking world fell apart. How are you going to survive that?
No.
I'm just in this mountain home, and the mountain just fell apart.
He's saying among the Tolnar, you should be able to get fairly close to a dwarf or fairly close to an elf.
Yeah, if they were inbreeding over millennia.
But yeah, it makes me wonder what the difference will be with the Tolnar. Like, how close to a Minotaur can we get with the Tolnar? Can we get close to a Minotaur? I don't even know.
Were they a form of the Tolnar that broke off at some point?
Oh, that's fascinating.
That they left the containment, and that was the corruption that they took on.
Yeah, or they just decided to break off. Period. Once they hopped out. Yeah, lots of fascinating questions with the lore coming up with these new reveals that have been coming out the last few months.
There seems to have been a lot of work put into this. Like these are some pretty. I'm gonna pop their pictures. There's some pretty detailed character or art, I guess, to this. So a lot of thought. I was about to say before we went live, and I thought, well, I should save this for now. But when we are live, is I'm kind of more interested in playing one of these than anything of the player races that are available. I don't know if that means that I'll eventually be playing a Tolnar, but this seems more like interesting to me than some of the other stuff that we've seen rendered in game already. I don't
That's
know.
basically a Tauren.
I do get the sense that they're really big, like that they're, you see the one with the shield with a dwarf strap to it. That's not a small dude right there. That is one piece of beef.
Dwarven armor, anyway.
Yeah. So I think that's going to lend to them being just a tougher sort of creature. It's not going to be something you just come across like 3 of them in the wild and just kick all their butts. I would hope that they're going to be a formidable enemy that, maybe its lowest level that you'll ever see them at is 30 or something.
Well, I'm interested in these sorts of other races. What just are they corrupted? Are they not corrupted? Like why, how did they exist? Like how we know the Tolnar went through some pretty negative things in order to exist, right? They had to adapt. That's how they became the Tolnar. And then we get, like these Minotaurs, like, okay, are they already existing? Are they some sort of creation that has been corrupted and now they present the way they do? Clearly they have, and this is where we start to get into, we either don't know enough lore or we don't, or there are holes in the current lore. It's like clearly they have a hate for the dwarves, but if the dwarves didn't exist, like why is there a hate? Like why are they adorned on their shields and around their necks? Like if they've been gone, if the Dunir's been gone for 1,000 years, like there shouldn't. However long we were in Sanctus, I mean it was
millennia, not 1 millennium. We don't know how many. They haven't given us a number.
So a long time. So
yes.
So one is just well, how did they come to be anyways? Are they a part of the Harbingers? Like did they come in with the ancients, or were they already there and then they got corrupted? And
I'm hedging because it's not the Dunir. The Dunir were never there. It's the Dunzenkel.
Well, but still,
dwarves.
Like
the one that I kind of look at is I compare them to the Sladeborn. Sladeborn were they're happy, proud bird people, and when the corruption came, they took to the clouds, but they were eventually hunted there, and they were cursed, they were tainted. Now, when you look at them, yeah, they've got some of their, avian features still, but they don't look feathery. They're all like raw and muscly and like Attack on Titan, like that Titan form where it's like the, a giant person inside out sort of thing. That's kind of what they look like. They don't look, pretty. They look like they have definitely been taken from some bird form and made into some horrid, twisted, tortured version. Those Minotaurs don't look like that. They look like some sort of apex predator. I don't know if they're the favored ones, if they already came, like you said, they came through with the Harbingers, or if they were quick to bend the knee instead of running away, and so they were granted agency. It's like, all right, we're going to give you some juice. You're gonna work for us. Will we call upon you? You do things for us, and so long as that happens, we'll leave you alone. They could have had that sort of relationship with the folks that were in charge after the apocalypse. So we don't know.
I think that any peoples, any races that remained on the surface and not in the underrealm have been influenced by corruption. But the other interesting thing about that is the relationship to refugees from Sanctus who become murderers and temporarily gain corruption, are temporarily corrupted, I guess, because they're murderers. Maybe that hatred is something that makes all of these mobs and NPCs, inextricably harboring hatred for life. I don't know. But part of my question about that is, would we be able to use diplomacy with them at all? Like, is corruption corrupting their minds so much that goblins we can't really negotiate with? Minotaur we can't negotiate with? Again, can we make friends with these people? I mean, that's an option to try. If we side with the ancients, will they accept us, or will they just murder all Dungeon Kell looking people?
I don't care. I want to play them just so I can mess with everyone else. But
Well, again, how close can you get to them with the Tolnar? We'll have to see that too.
and I put this in chat. They clearly have shamans, right? We've seen an image, and I think Steven mentioned that as a class. So they've had access to magic and essence. So how?
Of course, because it's Vera, yeah. Which you're saying that means they probably
if they
didn't
came
come from Sanctus,
right? Because how would they have these sorts of classes already? I still just also I'm confused by how they can have this still hatred towards a specific group that hasn't existed for thousands of years. It's weird. The skeletons.
Well, again, we have to learn whether or not maybe it's Dungeon Kell skulls that have been passed down through their generations. Who knows? Doesn't mean that it's a recent skull. We don't know that. Yeah. How long do Minotaur live? Millennia? How long do elves live? We don't know.
For all of them, it could be till they get killed.
Mm-hmm. But lots of questions with the lore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of it seemed like they will have their own classes. Some of them may be reflected in our player classes, the classes that are available for players. But I'm wondering if they will have unique classes as well. What does that mean for augments? Minotaur augments.
Or what if you could use their augments?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you
was
mean?
That was just popping in my head as well. Yeah.
Now that would be an interesting system, right? If you could just not only have player created, or however we get augments, but also through the killing of other creatures that have class-based systems. Are you able to get something from them that you can then put in?
Yeah, because there are racial augments, so we might be able to learn Minotaur racial augments.
Or even
interesting.
Yeah, or even against specific shaman, right? So maybe they have a type of augment that only is found to them for that class.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, cool. Anything else on the Minotaur? How do you say that? You're saying it Minotaur?
Yeah.
I say Minotaur.
Mine, tar.
Yeah.
Where do they come from?
Greece.
Yeah, and who put them where?
Minos. Is that the name?
Yeah.
Okay. But I speak American. You see,
Right.
Minotaur.
I thought for a minute you were referring to the game, and you said where they come from, and the answer is Greece. I'm thinking, what the hell? Why is Greece and why is Greece somewhere on the map? I didn't see that on the map.
Nope, not that Greece. The other one, the IRL one.
All right, the giant killers. Is there anything interesting there?
All
Just that
right.
there are giant killers, that was surprising to me too. Yes.
I'm trying
That's
to
not what I thought.
correlate.
It's not what I thought of when I looked at the armor in the first place. I don't know what that has to do with giant killing, but okay.
Yeah, because we saw the picture of the Cyclops. I'm guessing that's the giants that they're potentially referring to here.
I mean,
I don't know if you have the image of that, but they gave the scale and sort of difference. Somewhat like about 7 to 8 player character, default human T poses high is how tall that thing is. So it's still not like so big that you can Mickey Mouse it and just like run up its sleeves, but it's definitely of the right size and proportion to be fast and responsive and dexterous enough to kick and stomp and bash through a group of people.
I did not notice oversized weapons, which I would think might be a thing if you're fighting giants, but
Oh, like using war machines, using ballistas and stuff.
no, I mean oversized. If anybody's going to use an oversized weapon, it's going to be people like a super huge great sword.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, he's got that giant tree log.
Well, right, the Minotaurs have that, but the giant killers don't. But,
I'm saying that the Cyclops has a giant log.
yeah. I'm saying that the giant killers, you would think that they'd be using something extra big. But I mean, I guess the weapon master would be able to summon that hammer strike thing as their active skill. The essence hammer.
Having looked at the set, I get more of a feeling that you would go into battle with the rhino and try to, slash and gash at its legs, or the thing that's actually just the caravan looks like some sort of like smash and drilling device or something, again, to try to ram at them. Looks like the fort's got some giant skulls or something on it.
Oh yeah, I hadn't, and that's a Cyclops. I'm just now understanding the skulls on the freehold, because I think when I looked at it originally, I didn't realize they were giant killers. I mean, I think they look awesome, the skulls there, but I was not getting that it's coming from their giant killers, and those are the skulls of the giants. That's fascinating.
The armor itself is covered in small spikes, which if it's a prickly piece of fruit and it's like the difference of picking it up and eating it or not, a giant might pick something else. If you're trying to fight a giant and you're wearing those thinking it's going to help you, nah, it doesn't matter. They'll take a little, itchiness on their hand in exchange for just crushing you. I don't think that's going to help very much. Mm-hmm. And it's especially not going to help you in the situation where you get hit with essentially a golf driver sort of strike and knocked off into the distance. If you're not dead on impact, you're gonna be dead when you land.
Yeah, I'd forgotten actually about the harpoon, which is also kind of surprising to me for Vera. It looks like there's magic projecting it at the base, but still, I'm wondering how that
Naval
would be a
content.
weapon.
It's all the rage.
Well, is that
Yep.
supposed to be naval content, or is that supposed to be to help with giants?
Exactly.
We
It
use
looks
a harpoon
like
for giants.
hey, it worked in Vindictus really well. You get an enemy tacked down to the ground with 3 or 4 ropes, and then sitting there struggling. It's trying to break the ropes while you're getting free hits on it.
That's how you climb up its back and bash it in the skull.
Oh yeah, I could see that. No, I kind of figured it was going to be more of like the Gulliver's Travel sort of thing. You just have a bunch of tiny little things to hold them down. For
I
it,
think you
it's just
stick it
like
in the person and
thread,
climb up.
but
Yeah.
That'd be
you
not
get a
too
bunch of those.
be too hard to implement, right? How many strings have you thrown at them, and each one has a timer, and you have to reach a certain number for it to fall down and stay down?
I just want to see people using this during a caravan raid.
If it works.
Right. It's just a skin.
I'm
That's
confused.
true.
The art always just I can't help it. I think very biologically, like very that's just how my brain works. So
Yeah, is that even a weapon
Mhm.
skin, or is that just an accessory? Now that I think about it, it just looks like something you like strap on your body, which is badass. Like I might buy it just for that if that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, just an accessory cosmetic skin. So it doesn't even do anything. Which gets us back to the question. So I don't know how many people in our Discord. If not, we tend to chat from time to time. And on the 6th, there was a post. I just get so riled up about their cosmetics and the way they advertise. Because here we are. We've been following this game for 6 years. And we all know damn well that this is a cosmetic skin. It has no function. And here we are talking about it as though it has a function. And there was a tweet like they usually do of the Rhino mount, and it was asking what combat abilities would you like to see a Rhino mount have. Now, of course, it says see a Rhino mount have. It doesn't say this one. However, when you're reading that, the brain is going to automatically connect to this mount that you are going to purchase that is going to have some sort of combat skill. And we know that's not the case. It's a skin, but it's advertised in a way that I'm positive once they finally release, there's going to be so many people like, is this broken? Why doesn't it work? I want a refund. I thought this was supposed to do something. And it's all because of how it's marketed, and it drives me nuts. And I'll get off that soapbox. But what I was going to point out is the Metal Hawk having 2 wings just confuses the hell out of me. Like, how is that even aerodynamic? How does that work? Like,
Yeah.
you're pushing wind down into the other one that's pushing. I'm confused by that.
They've shown it in the past, and it looked weird then, and it looks weird now, and I think it's always going to look weird. And that one is just one of those, like, because magic sort of things.
I mean, I have a thing when you're just trying to be too weird, you just end up being too weird, and it just looks wrong. It doesn't work. But anyways,
It looks weird and it works.
well, sure. And the other was the wagon. Like it has those big old horns coming out of the front of it. How the hell is the thing supposed to turn? If it goes to the left, it goes to the right, it's going to run into a horn. How are you supposed to navigate? If it tries to go to the left, it's going to have a horn sticking in its side. It's going to make it go to the other side, and it's going to get another horn. Like what? I don't know. I get confused by that. So. But I'm pretty much done with skins, I think, at this point for now. Unless I see something that just, and I've honestly not seen anything that looks super cool to me. Like the Giant Slayer Lodge, that just looks weird. Like I don't know.
I think it's awesome for a necromancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For a necromancer.
Same with the caravan.
And yeah. We are trying to figure out if there's a way to do giveaways, but so far I don't believe there is. You're not allowed to transfer or trade items. Obviously, I think that comes back to the trying to avoid paying for gold, essentially, because that's what that could eventually turn into. But so I've reached out to see, hey, is there even a way just to give not an item per se, but what about an Alpha 2 pass? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think
But guessing they won't do that.
Metal Hawk is supposed to be like a dragonfly. That's the only thing I can find that has a wing structure that would work kind of similar, but that's just weird.
I'm guessing they won't hand out giveaways until they actually secure the content creator program.
Could be.
And I wonder, when did they discontinue that? What I guess Alpha 1 was after they discontinued the content creator.
They never really started the content creator program.
No, we were a part of the content creator program for a while.
If you want to call it that.
I understand, but what
it
I'm
was
saying
like
is,
an early, like, we're taking applicants, and some of our applicants will still kind of treat in some sort of way, kind of like a fledgling creator program, but not having fully established and deployed it.
Yeah, but my point is that's that was 2020 that they asked for the applications, I think.
They've been asking for a bit, but that's fine.
And then we had Alpha 1. I'm partially wondering, do we think it's going to be put into place by Alpha 2? That's where I was going with that. But I think, because I was wondering if it was still active during Alpha 1, but I think it was not active during Alpha 1. So it might not even be active during Alpha 2.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing that you would put on your streams, on your, it was probably a very light, like, I think you got a forum badge, but I don't know that I did. I'm curious. So we've not really talked a lot about their program, because they're also pitching this idea of a second group that's kind of a content creator light, or let's, be a part of the second group and we'll teach you how to become a content creator, kind of like minor leagues, which I think could have some utility. But then it makes me also kind of pause and say, well, how much effort are they going to actually put into this? Like, realistically, like, because once this game's live, hopefully it has millions of players. And are you really going to set aside the time and the personnel to create some sort of boot camp or something like that for your content creators? I don't know that that's the place for any individual game to do, really. Like, I don't see that as that relationship. I see it the other way. You're there to provide the content creators with access, not necessarily training or tips. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it could be that they're just as willing to help people build up from a smaller channel and a smaller following as they are to onboard somebody who's big, but it's probably only going to play the game for like 3 months because they get paid for, switching around and playing other games and this and that. So,
I think it could be a wonderful thing. I'm just curious how much they'll actually be able to expend into that. Because it seems like it's kind of an all or nothing sort of program. Like, you're either going to do it, or because if you kind of half-ass it, I think it's going to come across clearly as being half-assed, and then people are going to be mad with you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Well, I want to talk. In doing some of these shorts, I've been watching a lot of old interviews. And so when we had talked about naval content and PvP, we've talked a lot about it, but I think we had briefly kind of mentioned, well, what happens if you die on the open ocean, right? Where do you respawn? Is it going to be on land, on ocean? Do you just, what actually is going to be the case? And stumbling through that, actually, when our very first interview with Steven, that question was answered, at least back then. Now, that was 2008. Sorry, that was 2018. Now, I will say, in watching a lot of old to new videos, Steven is very consistent. He is very consistent. Outside of this whole open PvP thing, that has been the one non-consistent thing that there has been from start to finish. But he mentions that, if you're in the open sea, you will you can only spawn your boat from a port. So if you're taken down, you're going to be starting from land. So I wonder how that starts to play into people's minds from a PvP perspective. Or the other question that I would have for Steven, because this does seem to have been a change with open seas PvP, free for all PvP, is if that has changed. Is there going to be a new rule or some other process for PvP groups? Because that seems like it would just completely annihilate PvP if you're in the middle of the open ocean and then you have to start all the way, who knows where, because it's not even just land, it's land with a port.
No, well, I think from what he said, in the dev stream, it's along the coastal part. So, I mean, which implies a port, perhaps. But I think there's respawn points, especially now that it's bigger. I don't know that you can do it exactly at a port, but it's going to be somewhere on the coastal waters, most likely.
Because I feel like
on the beach.
I mean, it makes sense, I guess. It plays into their whole idea of not zerging, and that's actually where the conversation came out of. It was, I think, Diggs, you had asked. Somehow the conversation was about big zergs and how you couldn't zerg a caravan because the caravan's moving, and if you don't have fast travel, like you can't call out a spot because the caravan's constantly moving. And this would make sense there, but I'm just curious how that just changes the dynamic from this idea of PvP in the open seas. It seems like it would be a big thorn into just generating a constant open seas PvP.
It's several questions because, for instance, your ship is destroyed, and it's not just that you die. I don't think, or yeah. What are the details?
No, he said ship. Yeah, the ship is no longer. It has to be Now, obviously not from beginning, but you have to respawn your ship.
Right. And so how much does that take? How long does that take? There's just questions like how quickly can you get back out to the open seas? That's a question. So
well, and now that they expanded the space, I feel like you're going to probably end up, if this remains the sort of rule for everyone, PvP, PvE, if you're in the open ocean, you lose your boat, you got to start from the shore. I assume what that leads to is that you're going to not see PvP probably in big parts of it, like big open areas are going to probably have very little PvP. It's going to be around the islands, the trade routes. That's where I think you'll probably see some place where it's easier to get back to. It's probably where you'll see the bulk of just that spot right in between the two continents.
I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that a lot of where we're going to see PvP is just anywhere that a large mob of 4 to 6 ships that are working together can find one ship that's just a scraggler out in the open and just take their stuff, kill them and take their stuff. Because, you think you're going out there on an adventure. Well, we're out here to take what you got on your adventure. I feel like that's probably going to be a lot more of it than like 1v1s and 2v2s is just straight up, pirating at sea just as a roving band of gankers.
Yeah, people are expecting that island that's in the middle, the one that's beneath Drakethbor. They're expecting that to be a big pirate island that lots of people are vying over to control. Um, that kind of reminds me of that map that you found on Reddit, was it? Where somebody put where they thought the 85 or 82. I think they tried to put 85
Nodes.
nodes on the map, but they only had room for 82. So they really just put nodes places on the map until they ran out of space. But kind of interesting because I think there won't be so many nodes on the surface.
Yeah.
We'll have to have some in the underrealm as well. But it was interesting to take a look at least. I think they had put a node on that island in the middle, but I think especially since it's not even named, it's likely just to be whatever people come up with. We'll see.
Wrap that up. There was again a PVX conversation that Diggs got pulled into. It's funny just to watch people specifically point you out. Like it's like they're just trying to get the boogeyman, or what is it? Beetlejuice. Say the name 3 times.
All right.
And it was funny to me because before you joined this post, it was a post about, it was actually not a terrible post. It was a suggestion of, well, okay, if OpenSea's free-for-all PvP is sort of a lean to the PvP side, is there a way to do a lean to the PvE side of PvX? And I think and you might remember this better than me, but the suggestion was something in Underrealm. I don't know, the further you go down in the Underrealm or in a dungeon, that the more corruption a PvP player will get if they kill you, if they gank you, and somehow just to make the balance more in favor of PvE. But the only reason that was an interesting idea, but I'm bringing this up because it was not too long where everyone started saying, well, where are all of the PvE players? There's no one commenting on this thread, so that must mean they don't exist. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if you're going to be an asshole, people aren't going to come talk to you on your thread. Like, well, that's a sign of no one coming to talk to you. Is not a sign of they're not here. It's a sign of they don't want to mess with whatever conversation you're throwing out.
Well, the interesting part to me about that is, what does PVX even mean at this point? I was thinking PVX meant that the game was kind of balanced, because he would say you need your PvEers and your PvPers. But when you have a PvP zone, where you're saying, well, you PvE people can come here if you want the good stuff, why would I want to go there? And why, I mean, it seems to me that PVX now means that PvPers will have to do some PvE. It's going to be PvPers doing some PvE. It's not, when he says we need some PvEers, it's really meaning we need some PvP people to do some PvE stuff. I don't know how many PvE players are going to be playing on a server.
There was an interesting comment that I think is worth a discussion, was the idea of, well, isn't dungeons being challenging? The further you get into a dungeon and it gets harder for the raid, isn't that the PvE swing of PvX? That's the opposite side, is the challenge within the dungeons. And I think that's not a bad thought. That makes sense on the surface, but and even I think Vacnar kind of commented on the thread that, well, when you're in these really challenging places, aren't people going to be more likely to group up to kill the raid boss than PvP with each other? And I can see where that might seem the case, but there's always going to be 2 or 3 people that their goal is just to ruin someone else's day. Like, we were chatting beforehand, you go watch Ninja play, he gets super frustrated playing Fortnite because people stream snipe him all the time. It's because the goal is not to win, it's to disrupt somebody else's So all you know, in a big raid, all it takes is one or two people to sneak down there and just completely mess it up. So while I understand, yeah, I think most people probably would band together if there was a big world boss and we all got to share loot. Yeah, probably the majority of people would join together to kill that. But there's always going to be a few that will, and it's a little bit easier to disrupt it because everyone is so focused on a difficult raid. It doesn't take a lot of effort to disrupt that, I don't think. So I'm just curious to see how it all plays. We always go back to the, player behavior is players will do whatever they can get away with. Like that is their behavior. That was in Ultima Online with their ecology. Like that, I wish people would watch that video of Lord British talking about how they crafted this nice system for all of their wildlife. And then the game releases, and within what, like a few weeks, like the players had killed everything. And like if you have the ability to, you will. Like that's just people will do that.
Yeah, I think like Vacner, I've been saying for years that when we have that winter dragon that brings the perpetual winter as the world boss, the perpetual winter stays until we vanquish the winter dragon. It seems to me that people would be cooperating to get rid of that winter dragon because it behooves them to uh, get back to the resources or items or augments or whatever that they could not get because it's still winter and it's not supposed to be there.
Unless you're trying to screw that area over, in which case you want to keep that dragon around, and then it'll make it that much easier to attack later.
And ice wizards might want to have perpetual winter. So that is a thing. But along those lines, there's reasons. It's not just there's a world boss and we want its stuff. It's going to have an impact on the world. So I would expect people to be wanting to cooperate to get rid of
But
the negative impact on the world.
but to a degree, I'm a good example of this, right? I'm pretty outspoken when it comes to the religious components, and why can't I just have an agnostic sort of route? And if there's a way to disrupt the progression of the church of the node, like I'm gonna probably lean into the others. Like that's probably the way I will end up playing. So I guess an example of that to a degree. Am I going to be kneecapping raiders? No, but and that's, I think, again, just an example of if given the opportunity, people will find their niche and they will do those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think one of the last things that I have in that thread, because somebody said something like Nicker said when PvE players realize that they can fight back against players the same way they would fight back against an aggro mob who attacked them first. And I'm like, AI can't yet play the same way humans play, and I wouldn't play a game where AI fights the same way as humans fight because they aren't as creative and conniving as humans. AI is not. Yeah, I mean, gamers are going to be super creative and trying to find any hole they can fit in to get as close to an exploit as they can. AI is not that great yet. I mean, they aren't going to be looking for loopholes to get you.
Or they're just going to be cheating and doing things at, superhuman sort of speeds. And that's why they're able to beat you, because they're always there on all the cooldowns. Anytime you try to do something, they're always moving out of the way. They're, just playing perfect. Because that's the other side of things. When you're actually making something where you're trying to make a competitive AI, you have to start with the one that is just the absolute, like, cannot beat it, the very best, and then you have to dumb it down from there.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yeah. But it's still somewhat predictable by the time they get to their sweet spot, the devs. It's going to be more predictable in ways that compared to a human. And once they're comparable to a human, probably it'll be too hardcore for me to be playing against them. So, because humans are going to be trying to figure out any little, thing they can get away with for sure. Until somebody tells them it's an exploit and they have to stop.
So there was another post, a forum thread that I thought was interesting, which was a discussion of whether node types will be imbalanced due to how the mayor selection process is. Like if there's going to be a tendency to stay away from some, like the military node was specifically mentioned, because you can be a bad mayor and persist versus a scientific node or something where a bad mayor is much more likely to get kicked out. The same with, I think, religious and military were the two examples that you could have a persistently bad mayor and not be able to really change much about that process short of a siege.
Right, but I think that's part of the plan. There's an example that Steven's given about taxes, like if the mayor is a tyrant and the taxes are too high and trying to keep your citizens, might also fall into that happiness. If your NPCs aren't happy, then I'm going to assume your citizens probably are not happy either. So I think that
Well, okay. Now we just talked about how players and NPCs aren't at the same level of agency. It might be, SimCity style. Oh yeah, if you build a school and a police station and a residential next to each other and a public library and city hall all in a cluster, you put the power plant and waste management, 8 blocks away, you're going to get mayor of the year for like the first 5. Let's try it on the Super Nintendo version. That's how it works. So it's that sort of thing. If you can formulaically keep all of the peasants in line, then the only balance against you is players who don't like the things that you've been deciding on.
Yeah, but
So
why would they not like them differently than the NPCs? In what ways?
If you're able to satisfy the NPCs in, they're not getting eaten by the monsters, they're able to eat and drink and do the things they need to do, that they're satisfied, they might not care that much how much actual
point. And I think they won't. I've got that part. I'm trying to understand what the PCs would be unhappy about that the NPCs don't care.
Oh, what actual structures are being put down? If, for example, it's the second military node in the region that's reached level 5, for example, that it's not going to be a metropolis, neither is the other one. But you're building the exact same buildings that the other one has, and building the exact same specificity. While the NPCs might not care, the players might be saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? We don't need this redundancy. You need to be building these other structures because that's the stuff we need. And the mayor could be saying, well, screw you. You've got to depose me by force then, because I'm going to compete directly with that other place and try to replace them. I'm going to do their own thing better than them. So that's the sort of thing I think where the NPCs wouldn't care, but the players totally would.
Yeah, and I don't know about totally would, but regardless,
not all of the players, but
whatever. If you have enough of the players who are not happy, that's part of the intended gameplay. Is that there's ways to for them to leave. They might help out with the siege. Maybe they won't pay their taxes. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll choose to not be citizens of that node anymore. That's expected gameplay from my understanding. Get rid of the tyrants.
Yeah, but I think that part of the question though is, do people just even give up on being a part of a military node and just move on to scientific? But I'm curious with positioning too, because every node is born of a type, right? That from the start, it is a certain type. It doesn't change. So, how realistically close can we get, 3, 4 scientific nodes? Like, is it even possible to have 4 scientific metropolises within a reasonable
Right.
area? I don't know.
Right. Hmm.
I don't know.
We shall find out.
Who knows? Can you create Tina Fey? Sorry, that's from a video I did of. Anyways, yeah, there was.
I guess we have to find out where Alpha 2 is taking place. How much of the map are we supposed to have? And now it's going to be fascinating, right? Because we'll have a portion of the open seas, I would expect. So it's got to be somewhere in the middle rather than like I guess you could still do a quadrant and get plenty of the open seas. The open seas is right in the middle. Yeah, what section is it gonna? Oh, it's gonna be probably the southeast. Probably gonna be the southeast because we've got Riverlands as part of no, southwest. I'm sorry, it's gonna be southwest because we've got the Riverlands as part of Alpha 2.
So this was a great question. Sorry. Of our same type nodes going to, the chat just changed. I just totally lost where I was.
Our same type node's going to provide access to the same quests.
Yes.
That's a good question. I feel like they might use similar archetypes and formulas, but it'll be relative to the people and the regions and the stuff going on around. So
there's
it
biomes.
might be.
Yep.
So it might be that the recipe is somewhat dependent on the node, but it could be that, that's just as much a factor as all the other stuff going on in the node. So it isn't really necessarily, this node type only has these kind, this node type only has these kind, so much as when the quest manifests in this type of node under these conditions, it's going to be like this. If it's this type of node, well, it's going to have this slight variation. I would expect it's going to be more like that than like really being cut along like the dichotomy of what node type it is.
Well, that's the event system, right? We've not really talked about that. That was a dev discussion. I think that ties into this at least, right? So you can have nodes of the same type, but if certain circumstances are met in one versus the other, you're going to have different events taking place. Which leads to a whole different trajectory of another, which is I think one of the neater parts of this if it works. As far as a system, one of the coolest things I was reading about it before the show that I never thought of that was really neat, that I think is great for long-term play is as you have changes in node structure up and down the paths, and you have event systems occurring. Like events can lead to different craftables being available. So loot tables change, gatherables change. And I think that's pretty cool way to keep things fresh versus knowing 5 years from now, got to go back to such and such place because that's the only place I can find this ore. It also, I think, gives more incentive to participate in events. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So we've got differences in the services. We've got differences in the racial demographics. We've got differences in the region. We've got differences in the season. We've got differences in the biome. I mean, there should be a variety of differences, even for those that have the same node type. And
then even for things that have all of those the same, there'll still be different creatures in them. There'll still be different elevations in them. There's so much variance that it just because they're two different nodes of the same type, even at the same level, so much more different stuff going on there that's influencing it.
And nodes influence each other. So,
Right.
two nodes of the same node type that's going to cause interactions with each other. So
Yeah.
there's going to be probably some conflicts as well as some cooperation going on there.
Yeah.
And I would,
Like it seems like there was the in the little quest thing they had us go through where you find the corrupted gem and do the thing, and then it makes the thing emerge from the ground, and had been attacked by the nearby merchant node, if I'm not mistaken. And so that was kind of an interesting sort of thing. Is I don't know if there was, there not necessarily any inkling that they were tipped off about you folks having that corrupted gem. But a raid, a siege was going to happen. Apparently, it almost sounds like with the timing of things that siege was going to happen, and the players just happened to end up there, anyway. But I guess I'm kind of getting off on a bit of a tangent here, just talking about the how quests and stuff can potentially build and emerge and change and such.
Well, quests and events, and then reputation. I wonder how reputation. So we know there's the player characters have reputations that they build up with the nodes, but nodes with NPCs, whatever kind of reputation they might have with mobs or world bosses. What reputation do they have with the castles? And I still wonder how the ancients might play a factor. So there's we've got religions and social organizations and all. There's so many different ways that they could be different, I think. So
I like also the addition of natural disasters to the event system, because again, we all have talked about this suspicion or this curiosity of, do players really like the path of least resistance? And if that's the case, do things just get very stagnant just because people get comfortable? You're able to do the things you want without really any much interaction. And is that a way just to come in and say, no, this isn't what we wanted. This isn't how it's supposed to be. We're going to throw an earthquake and it's going to swallow up all three of your metropolises. Start over. Like it's a very interesting way. And I think a good way, actually. I think that would be, rather than saying, we're going to start a new server, right? Like, oh, well, we're just server transfer over. Like, this is just a way to destroy the server, but a way that fits into the lore, a way that fits into the system. You uptick the corruption. Okay, we're going to trigger a corruption event, and we're going to trigger it in a way that there's no way you all can compete. You can fight it, but it's going to eventually win, and we're going to start over. Like, just a lot of interesting ways.
I'm hoping if they are going to do merges, it's some form of world destruction and the Phoenix brings the world back. Yeah. But the other cool thing is just, it was so cool to be looking at that. It was a volcano off in the distance, right? In Alpha 1, and you could just see it from afar and run up the side of it.
You couldn't run up the side of it. There was that corruption barrier that would eventually stop you. You could get to a certain point, and then you were just walled off.
Yeah, but
you could get under and into it, and it was a dungeon.
Just seeing that from afar, and us thinking it's benign because it hasn't erupted before. But that would be super cool to have it finally erupt one day and wreak havoc.
Oh,
I was commenting on a post on the forums about flying mounts and why is it so hard to get them? Why can't we have them? Even if it was time limited or they didn't last long. But somebody had made a comment of this came up in time with Diggs talking about the volcano. It just came to mind, saying, well, why don't you just climb to the highest peak that you can find and jump off with a glider and float down? Like that's your way to see the content from up on high. It's like, okay, that makes sense. I can get down with that. Yeah, I mute myself sometimes. Just it is on purpose. It's so that background sounds don't come through, and then I often forget to unmute myself. So
That's common for streams. Yep.
yeah, it's a house with 2 kids, a dog, 3 cats. A lot going on. So
Hmm.
um, well, the last thing I thought was funny. We're about out of time. I saw the post too because I know this would make everyone here probably laugh, but it was the title of the post is New World's Gathering Crafting System is S tier and should be replicated. And I'm just waiting to see what posts come to that. So
Yeah, I see that you would link that one, and I will say for the style of game that someone might be making where they want everything you see to be gatherable, it gets it done. I loved that part. You see it, you can mine it. Short of like an actual cave wall where you're going to be like destroying world geometry. I loved that. But how it actually got to be used, I didn't like the actual crafting system itself in a few ways. And I've talked about it in previous episodes. I don't even talk about it again. I don't like parts of the crafting system, but the part that I do like and the part that I believe they are going to be doing is the modularity. I know how to make Tolnar broadsword. The Tolnar reptilian broadsword, the style they specifically go for. Okay. So I know how to make something in that shape, and it's going to have a certain base of attributes. But the more high quality materials I put into it, and the higher quality station I craft it at, and the higher my skill level, hypothetically, that should be not only creating a better item, but giving me more control over the results of what that item is. That's the sort of thing that I'm hoping and excited to see, because that was one of the things that really, really hurt about New World is you had so much control over so many things, but then some of the most important parts were just no. We had to make a simple system to make all this work, and now you're butting up against that simple system. You want it better? Too bad. You should have joined the team 5 years ago.
yep, I couldn't have said it any better.
But it's New World is also based on a survival game mechanics for crafting rather than MMORPG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's trees that we know that aren't worth anything. They're just made of like paper mache, and if you cut it down, you'd just be making the terrain look uglier, and you can't actually make anything. So you don't even have to worry about. You can't highlight those trees. They're junk trees. They're like gray trash. You can't even sell them to anyone. So instead of cutting all the trees down and only being able to use 10% of them, they just made it so you don't have to cut them down.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'm pretty sure it does not work well for. I mean, it was awesome to be able to do that. It felt great for that game, but it's not going to work well for what they want for the economy for an MMORPG.
No.
I thought the gathering was wonderful. Although I will say, by the time I stopped playing, which is almost a year now, I think I quit in October. When did they release? Even then, because initially, like the first several weeks, it was, oh, I've got to grab everything. Like everybody, I think, experienced this, right? Your bags were full because you saw something, you just got to hit it, got to chop it, got to get the rock, got to get the iron, because who knows if I'm going to see it again, or the silver. But really, by the end, even the gathering was sort of becoming this. I'm just going to run past that. I'm just going to kind of go past that. How many trees do I have to chop down now? So I feel like that was maybe more of a progression issue than a availability issue. But then also, yeah, I couldn't have said it better. No, the crafting just drove me nuts. As a crafter, as you skill up, you should get better. You should be able to choose to some degree, what your equipment, whatever your product is, you should have some say on the end state of that. And New World, it's just too much. Well, you can make a sword; it'll cut like a sword, but everything else is random.
You could only get about halfway there with the things that you would want to adjust, and then the rest of it would be random. And that basically meant you could make 1,000 half functional swords, and only 50 of them end up with a mix of attributes that any actual class, or like not class, but like archetype of player is going to use, that you're going to use this set of attributes together, and B, that given that it's also giving an ability that's worthwhile, or there were a few layers of things to it that you didn't have enough control. You'd be spending a lot of material making something that's close. And then the worst is that you couldn't make something of a lower tier to like hand make something for a friend. So if you want to make a power 350 sword for a friend that just hit that, the ability to equip that equipment, they're not going to be able to use it because you're not going to be able to make that for them because you can't actually lower the quality that much. You're always going to make a max tier quality because, of course, you're only ever going to make max tier quality items. Like, why are you making something crappier? So it was just a funky sort of system. There was a lot. I guess I should have said just go watch the other episode, because now we're kind of over and ranting about stuff we've already covered.
Well, Terradin was saying that New World is progressing and getting better progressively, and she's still enjoying playing. And I was thinking about jumping in and taking a look, so I might do that sometime in the next few days just to see what's changed. I saw some musical instruments, by the way. That seems to be a big thing. They had musical instruments for New World and for Baldur's Gate 3. I saw some drums. I not the kind of drums I would want to play, but seems interesting.
Yeah, the instruments I think are my biggest interest at this point for New World. I'm just curious to get in and see what it's like crafting. Now, watch, I'll probably log in. It's like, nope, got to be crafter level, something that I'm not even close to, because I quit playing in October of last year. So we'll see how long that lasts. That brings up New World brings up something to mind. I know we're out of time. One at the event system, there was corruption events. So this seems to fit in very much with New World, right? So New World, you have what's it called? The breaches that open up. I'm talking
breaches,
about
yep.
that. And how often were all of those actually put away? Right? How many of those were actually the players went in, they got rid of them, or whatever it is that you had to do to make them all disappear? I know that they were everywhere. Like, players just eventually got to where they didn't bother. So I'm curious with corruption events. Do you see a similarity of players just eventually, initially the first month or 4 months, it's like, oh, this is cool, let's keep doing it, and then you just sort of, I don't want to bother with it this time. And what does that actually end up leading to? I'm very curious.
Yeah, but my problem with New World was it seemed like they were too powerful for me to really do much with. Like, I would want to be able to do something with them starting at level 1. And it seemed like I had to get to level 20 before I would even be able to survive long enough to do anything with them. So I think that's the big thing, is that you have to have the events have to be something that everybody can participate in somehow.
Go back to Defiance, where you are auto leveled to a public event so you can participate in it. So if it's like a level 30 event, but you're level 1, whatever. You only have the abilities that you have, and you're still going to be limited, but you're going to be attribute and HP scaled up to approximately a competitive level 30. and your gear, with it. And so you can participate. When the event's over, you pop back down to where you were at, plus whatever experience you earned. Like that's always the thing for any game that wants to do public events. That's always the solution I go to because it was the most satisfying one I've ever experienced.
I have a question. And I saw there, Terradon posted, I think that the music itself is a random drop from mobs and gathering. That's just like, no. What? Like, why is that a random drop from mobs? Like, why, if I have an instrument, why can't I at least put it out in the world, right? Like, make it a rare drop somewhere in a abandoned house. Like, why do I'm seriously curious. Why do I have to kill things to get sheet music?
Mobs and gathering. Is it all gathering? It's like dink, dink. Oh, I broke open this gold ore. Hey, there's a song. Like yeah.
All right. Well, now I'm curious just to go play so I can complain about it. So,
oh no, you really done it this time, Amazon.
Not that they'll really care. So,
not a sponsor.
All right. Well,
though they own Twitch, so I guess I don't have to say that.
Well, I didn't realize that. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm going off on a tangent. You're saying them owning Twitch. Ninjas is I keep bringing him up the stream. I don't know why. I don't think I ever have before. Is streaming on all platforms now. So just completely got away from being partnered. I'm curious how that works because I don't think you can accept money from subs and things. So, anyways.
Yeah, no. If you've just got your sponsorship and everything all hooked up, and you're running your own in-channel ads that people can't skip. You do like talkies and stuff like back in the radio days. You've won. You can just stream on every platform. Your advertisers are gonna, keep on paying you every time you run that thing and say those words within the certain allotted intervals over a course of a show or a day.
All right.
Radio. That's one of those things you use to divide two numbers.
And I have to just chime in to say, because I've had to make house calls at work the last couple of weeks, and I'm learning that when I make house calls to these 75-year-old ladies who don't know how to use computers, invariably they also say, while you're here, can you put this stereo device that I've had in a box for 5 years? Do you know how to put that together for me? Like, okay, put together your CD player. CD radio. Yes, I can do that.
All right. Well.
All right. Shenanigans, everybody.
Yeah.
Go slay some giants, and I think we're on for next week. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're still
hopefully.
All right. Cool. Well.
All right, everybody.
It'll be fun.
Thanks for watching, and we will see you in a week. Have a great time.
Yeah. Like and subscribe and all of that sort of stuff. Share the show. See ya.